There are a couple of quick points that are based on some what I consider really nice studies. There's beautiful work in humans showing that bright light exposure in the morning, especially from sunlight, but if one doesn't have access to sunlight for whatever reason, there are commercially available so-called SAD lamps, seasonal affective disorder lamps. They range anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 lux, very bright, but certainly morning sunlight viewing and lamps of the sort I just described have been shown to increase the amplitude of the morning cortisol spike by as much as 50%, 50. So people hear cortisol and they freak out. They think that's not good. I want my cortisol low, but you actually want your cortisol highest in the morning and lower in the afternoon and evening. And there's a lot of reasons for that: elevated mood, focus, and alertness in the morning and throughout the day, and ease of getting to sleep at night, lower anxiety, lower depressive symptoms, and so on. So that bright light also serves to control the amplitude of cortisol in the direction you want in the early part of the day. The other thing that's just more of a underlying dynamics of the circadian visual system, which is a system that I worked on for years, these wonderful cells in the eyes that are not for image forming, but rather for detecting sunlight and bright light for sake of setting circadian rhythm, is that the sensitivity of that system early in the day is actually quite low. So you need a lot of bright light early in the day to effectively wake up your system and shut down the sleepiness signals, such as melatonin. But later in the day, it's a rather diabolical system. It takes very little light, even from artificial sources, to disrupt your circadian rhythm and quash melatonin. As little as 15 seconds of bright light in the evening, I think Chuck Zeisler's laboratory at Harvard Medical School showed, can quash melatonin in the evening. Now, I don't want people to freak out and think that if they go into a hotel bathroom, which oftentimes those are very bright, in the middle of the night, flip on the light, that they're going to completely screw up their circadian rhythms. But if I'm honest, they'd be much better off using their phone as a flashlight to navigate. People always say, well, wait, but the flashlight on the phone is very bright. But let's just get logical here. A light shown into your eyes, such as a flashlight, is very different than looking at a flashlight beam on the ground. Far and away difference. So the point is that if you don't get enough bright sunlight or light in your eyes early in the day, and then you're indoors under artificial lighting, you might think, well, this is really bright lighting. This is the kind of lighting that could disrupt my circadian rhythm at night, and therefore it's sufficient to wake up my system. No. Early in the day and throughout the day, you need a lot of bright light, as much as safely possible to avoid sunburn and things of that sort, which you don't want. But then as the evening comes around, after sundown, you need very little artificial light in order to disrupt your circadian rhythm. And then just very quickly, light from candles, fireplaces is okay. This is kind of interesting. It seems bright, but the measurements indicate that that's not going to shift your circadian rhythm much. Candles are great, but of course, don't burn your house down. So the orange and red tones in the evening, way dimmed down, that's the way to go. Early in the day, bright light, as bright as you safely can tolerate.
And what I like about, firstly, your mention of cortisol, you described how cortisol is rising in the morning, and that's a great thing, and it is a good thing. And in the evening, it's starting to drop. And if you look right around your prototypical bedtime, and we're going to speak later in this episode as to what your real natural bedtime is versus the one that you may be taking right now, it's very interesting. Cortisol will almost hit its lowest point, something that we call its nadir. It's the lowest point in that trough of its decline, right around the time when you should be sleeping. However, there's a great study that looked at people with insomnia. And in subsequent episodes, we'll discuss this too. But one of the ways that we think about or conceptualize insomnia is in two different flavors: sleep onset insomnia, I can't fall asleep, and sleep maintenance insomnia, I wake up, I can't get back to sleep. And what they looked at was essentially cortisol levels. They had a catheter in the arm and they were sampling it from the bloodstream, and they were able to do that every 30 minutes. So it's a little bit like time-lapse photography, and you're getting a data point every 30 minutes across the 24-hour period, looking at cortisol across now a full 24-hour period. And sure enough, when you look at healthy controls who can sleep well and insomnia patients, they look almost identical across the day. But then when it comes to falling asleep right around that bedtime period, the healthy controls are going all the way down. The insomnia patients go down and down and down, and then they have a rise back up right around that sleep onset period. And then they start to drop back down again, just as the control group. But then they also often will have a spike in the middle of the night, which then comes down. And then both of them are staying low throughout the early morning period, and then it starts to rise back up. So it's not as though net overall, there is a higher level of cortisol in people with insomnia. It seems to be right at those trigger zones that map very nicely to sleep onset problems and sleep maintenance problems.